guys and girls, my name's Dan, welcome back to The Forge. In today's episode of Trust Me, I'm a Blacksmith, we're going to be talking about picking your first anvil. I'm going to cover what to look for when buying or making, or what are the main points that you should be aware of when selecting an anvil or making an anvil. And I'm doing this from the perspective of someone who has no anvil. So I was given, I recently posted some images. I think it was a steak anvil. There was some other bits and bobs to do with the John Forest anvil that we've got here and the project that's coming up with that. And one of the questions I got on Instagram was, I'm looking to buy an anvil, what would you suggest? I'm not just going to talk the whole way through this video, I'm also going to start replacing some of the mounts for this anvil. A while ago I made this anvil stand. It's working great, it's really good, it's bolted down to the floor and I'm loving it. These bars have been bending, and also this the anvil can walk backwards and forwards. So basically I've got a couple of pieces of angle iron. I'm going to swap these out and maybe put some something on the side here just to hold the anvil in place a little bit. And I'm also going to upgrade the bolts that are going in it. Anyway, watch me do this. You're going to hear me talking about anvils. I'm going to show some other little bits and bobs of anvils that I've got in the workshop. And yeah, I'll see you in a bit.
First thing we need to consider when choosing an anvil is the size of the anvil, and this can be determined by a couple of factors: the space and area that we're going to be working in, and also the type of work that we're going to be doing. If you need to move your anvil or you've not got much room, having a massive anvil that takes up loads of room or is really heavy is going to be really inconvenient. And for most work that most blacksmiths do, making small hooks, making hammers, making gates and railings, you don't need massive anvils. You can get away quite happily with an anvil that weighs somewhere between 85 to 140 kilos, which is about 190 pounds to about 300 pounds. And if you get it right, a small anvil, well mounted, can do you really well.
Okay, not quite sure what I'm doing wrong here, but I've snapped two of these now. So they must be made of cesium. They're not very good. These are this Pro Hex Head self-drive screws, and they're for decking and roofing, and they are so much better than these 8mm coach bolts. I cranked down on these much harder than what I was cranking down on them, and they kept going. I haven't had one of these snap on me yet. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to re-put this in using the old screws. I'm going to put some new ones in actually, but I am going to try and use the old screws and then see how we get on. Yeah, bit annoying. I spent a lot of money on those bolts.
The second thing to consider is the construction of your anvil. There's three main types of anvil construction, not including those sort of homemade or anvil-shaped objects alternatives. You've got your cast iron, you've got cast steel, and you've got wrought iron with a fire-welded steel face. I would suggest you stay away from cast iron anvils if you can. They are dead, they offer very little return, and the quality of manufacture is often very poor. Wrought iron, there are some issues with swaying, but they can be looked after and they're great anvils. They do offer you great return, and also the cast steel anvils do as well. They offer you great return. You tend to find the manufacturing qualities of the wrought iron where they've been forged by hand. They do often look prettier and they're often better made. Cast iron anvils are cast steel anvils are relatively modern.
Okay, one thing I've done previously on the other holdfasts, or the hold down, or whatever you want to call them, was put in this chain holdfast, which is basically it's a chain off a forklift truck. Everything's off a forklift truck here. So I'm going to do the same thing, except from I'm not going to make this so it can come off, because once I started using it and realised it wasn't in the way, I just left it on. So I'm just going to weld this on here. Just going to give it a couple of spots of weld on there, and yeah, then we're in business.
And lastly, anvil shape. Do you need a horn? Could you get away with a sawyer's anvil? Do you need a hardy hole?
Okay, let's talk about anvil-shaped objects just a little bit. A hammer face. This is a piece of railway track and it's got a piece of forklift truck tine welded on it, and it's been shaped into an anvil. This is a lovely little thing. I can't take credit for this. A friend of mine made it, a guy called Dan Calderwood made it. If he's got an Instagram, I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description. Anyway, I'll give you some information about him below. But this is a version of an anvil-shaped object. It is a piece of forklift truck tine, which is probably in the 0.6 range carbon content, and it's been welded onto a shaped and fabricated piece of railway track. Now, I don't know the steel content of the railway track. I believe it's slightly better than mild steel because it does give quite a nice return. I know it's heat treatable, at least. It doesn't have a Pritchell hole. It doesn't have any sort of way of putting anything in here. That's not the end of the world, but it is something that I think you should be aware of. This little darling here is something that I made recently. It's a stake anvil that I made. There's a video up of it, basically, or there will be a video up of it if it's not up. And again, this is a forged object. It's a piece of fork truck tine with a piece of mild steel welded onto it. And again, it's something that you can use in order to get round. You could drive this stake, the stake part of this that goes into the hardy, into a log if you needed to. And I have seen some very resourceful people turn sledgehammers. This isn't quite a sledgehammer, this has come off a little 4-pounder, but I have seen people use these faces for sledgehammers. And also I've seen them turn them on their sides and work on these elements here. If you just want to make little hooks or any kind of small object really, these would work really well. The problem is you don't have a bick. Both of these anvil shaped objects do have bicks. So this is a section of forklift truck tine here. You could mount this on something and grind off one of these sides or turn it on its edge and use this. The one thing that all of these have in common is a lack of mass, and it's something that you'll come to appreciate as you start to get better at blacksmithing. The mass of an anvil greatly improves the amount of force that is given back out of it. And if by finding something a bit chunkier and a bit heavier and a bit more solid inside is going to give you a much better return. So I definitely recommend. These are great. Anvil shaped objects are great. They get you through. They definitely help you forge. They definitely help you learn, but they only help up until a certain point, and then it's kind of time to move on and try and find yourself a slightly better anvil. What we have here is my main forging anvil. It weighs about 125 kilos. It's Swedish in manufacture. It's a Kolschwar anvil. It has a really odd positioning for the hardy hole. It's right at this end. It's a cast anvil. I can see that this plate here is not in the same alignment as the rest of the body. So I don't know whether or not that this is slightly different material to this. If it is, I don't know how they've done it, or it's a heat treatment line, or it's some sort of fire weld of some description. I don't know. I love this little anvil. It's really hard. It offers a great return. It has been used at some point by a farrier, I believe, or a left-handed individual, because this wear here. Now, this is something that I'm going to talk about as we go through this video. This wear here is indicative of someone that's been pulling the clip out on a horseshoe, or is someone working from this side of the anvil a lot, making sets. It's pretty cheap as well. I think I paid about £150 for it. In this condition, it's flat. It's tidy, it's free of dings and nicks. The body of the anvil is pretty good. It rings like a bell, and that's something really important to look for when you're looking for anvils. That's all I really have to say about it. So this is Luke's anvil. He's lending me this anvil. I think this is going to go up to help with the classes that are coming up. And it's a wrought iron with a fire welded face. It's a beautiful condition anvil. It's I don't know how much work it's done. All of the edges on this are pretty much in good condition. There's a little bit of rounding here, but I don't know if that's intentional. And yeah, it's lovely. It's got no markings on as far as we can tell. And it probably weighs somewhere in the regions of about 160 to 180 kilos. It's quite a heavy anvil, but it's really nice. Again, this is wrought iron, so I'm not saying it's going to, but it could sway, and swaying is where you get a belly in the part of the anvil that's worked on the most. as a consequence, it sort of compresses where you work on it, this area very heavily, or you work on it a lot. It compresses the wrought iron below it, and then it sort of develops a little bit of a belly. This can cause pieces of the hard face to break off. But to be honest with you, as long as you support the center of this, I don't think this is going to give Luke any trouble. It's a lovely little anvil. This is a John Forrest anvil that we were speaking about recently in a previous video. Thank you for everyone's help who helped me work out what it was and where it had come from. And you can see this has a little bit of a sway in it. Even though I've learned that potentially these anvils might have a slope in naturally, something to do with correcting the smith's swing or something. There's still a belly in this, even if that's true. So if this end is higher and this end is lower, there's still a bit of a sway in it. That's where the wrought iron's compressed. Again, I think a farrier's had this anvil at some point because of this sort of damage that we have here. Now, the reason I'm showing this anvil again in this video is to say, if you find an anvil like this and it's cheap enough, buy it. Buy it for two reasons. The first reason is this anvil is still better than no anvil. And by cheap, I wouldn't pay more than £50, so say $80. I wouldn't pay any more than that for an anvil this size and shape, especially if it's in this sort of condition. And I want to fix it up and repair it. Now, that's one of the reasons. You should be able to get these a lot cheaper than you can afford to buy something like this Kolschwa or the larger wrought iron anvil that Luke's got. This particular anvil is a fixer. I can fix this. So if you bought this anvil and you were using it temporarily whilst you sorted out another anvil and cleaned the sides up and maybe welded these bits up and just lived with the sway, that's fine. That's a great thing. You know, you can fix it relatively quickly, relatively cheaply, and relatively easily. And as you get yourself in a position where you increase the number of tools you have, you increase your skill level, you can maybe potentially get yourself into a position where you can fix this anvil up so it was as good as new. And that would be great, because that means you've got a great little anvil that you've had for a very long time and that you're going to give a new lease of life to. So I definitely recommend, if you can get these for the right price, definitely buy them. I've unbolted the anvil down from its stands, and I'm just going to show you something now. When you're looking for an anvil, give it a wee tap with a hammer, and the reason is it wants to ring. A good solid ring like that is a good sign that the anvil is all in one piece inside. These cast anvils, not so much. They don't tend to suffer from cracking, but the wrought iron ones do. And one of the biggest issues with them is they get wet, they get water inside the wrought iron, the water freezes, and then it splits them apart. It's, you know, it doesn't happen to all of them, but a nice ringy anvil is something to look for. Also, find something with a nice flat face. This flat face is going to help you produce really nice quality work. Another thing that you want to be aware of is these edges. I'll try and get you a nice close-up of this. There's a little bit of damage on this anvil. This can be hard faced out. Super easy. This is a really nice, really easy fix. I just haven't had a chance to do it. I've got a little bit on this side and quite a bit here. And like I said before, this is indicative of someone that was making horseshoes or someone who is left-handed working for the anvil from this side. You also want to look for any obvious cracks, any damage around the hardy hole. Another place these break is because people put too larger tapers into the hardy holes, drive them in whilst they're working on them, and they split the heels off. You find that anvils have their heels ripped off all the time. You also want something that sits nice and flat when it's down, unless you have to correct it. I mean, you can correct it and bolt it down, that's not a problem, but just be aware of what you're buying when you're buying it. Try and look for a maker's mark, some sort of information about the anvil. If you have a maker's mark, you can determine a lot easier how it was manufactured. And try and find something that's in relatively good condition all round. Some anvils you'll find there's lots of cut marks in the feet and around the throat. That's the edge of the anvil there that's got that little bit of damage, but relatively easy to fix. The number one most important thing about anvils is to find something to forge on. If you're looking for that perfect anvil, they're far and few between. Sometimes you've either not got the right money, or there's something wrong with the anvil, or you go and get it and it's already gone. Be patient, you'll find one. I'm sure there's enough anvils out there for everyone. Get yourself a hammerhead, get yourself a piece of fork truck tine or a piece of mild steel, make yourself a striking anvil or something like that. Make yourself one of these little anvil shaped objects out of a bit of railway track and a piece of forklift truck tine. You know, give it a go, get something welded together, or buy a beaten up old rotter, or get yourself a cast iron one and get forging. That's the most important thing about buying an anvil. Get one. As soon as you've got one, then you can progress. You might find that the thing that you buy, the little tiny one, is all you need. You never need to buy another anvil again. Just a quick disclaimer, one thing, be careful if you're going to start whacking hammer handles. If you're going to start whacking hammers, these are hard, very hard, subsequently harder than anvil faces. So do be careful if you're going to go start whacking these. I would recommend normalizing them and then reheat treating them so that they are a little bit softer than they would have been when you bought them. Yeah, that's everything. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed talking to you guys and girls about anvils. We're a bit anvil heavy, we're a bit saturated with anvils at the minute. I'm sorry about that. It's going to be the last video on anvils. If this steak one isn't out, this one will be the last one, or the steak one will be the last one. But yes, that's everything. So thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are a subscriber, please ring that bell for notifications, because it'll let you know every time I make a video, and I make videos as often as possible. About twice a week. Sometimes I do a live, sometimes I do a third video. It just depends on how I'm feeling. Leave your comments down below. Let me know if I made any mistakes. I'm pretty sure what I spoke about is what I know. I don't think I made anything up. But then again, I might have done. Let me know your thoughts on anvil shaped objects. Do you think you should save and buy a really good anvil as your first anvil, or do you think it's more important to get hitting and make that object that you want to make rather than worrying about buying that anvil? I think that's everything. Thank you for joining me. I'll leave a link up here to a video, a link down here to another video. This is my Patreon. Great way to support the channel, and this down here is the subscribe button. Thank you for joining me. Bye bye.